Welcome to Beyond Rent, the property management podcast brought to you by Rent Manager. Each episode, we sit down with an expert to talk industry updates, tech solutions, and top tips for those in the property management space. And now, let's get to the conversation and go Beyond Rent.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond Rent. In today's episode, we're exploring why tenant screening has become far more than a routine background check. As the rental housing market grows more competitive and compliance-focused, screening is now a pivotal touch point that shapes the leasing experience for both renters and property managers. To help us learn more, we have Taylor with Intellirent joining us for the conversation today. Taylor, welcome to Beyond Rent.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Screening is really important. Yes, it's just one touch point along the many steps that it takes to get somebody into a unit, into a home, but it's a really important one. So I really appreciate you coming out, being in studio to have this conversation with us to learn more. Before we jump in and learning more about screening and where the industry sits right now, let's get to know you a little bit better. Go and introduce yourself and tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Taylor Lembi, CEO and founder of Intellirent. I grew up in a real estate family in San Francisco Bay Area. Started my career as a leasing agent many years ago. At that time, we would accept paper applications. Kind of the most forward-thinking thing that we had at that time was a Palm Pilot. And somewhere out there exists a hand sketch of, as I was waiting for an applicant to show up to a rental showing, I sketched out a leasing agent that kind of looked like myself with a mobile device, a phone, and then some ideas of what the tenant screening process should be. Again, that was way before a lot of this technology that came out, but here we are now.
I always love hearing people's background stories, and as we've recorded these podcasts, it is remarkable how many people that are in the technology side started on the operations side, right? They were in the industry, they were active in it, they were doing the work, and they spotted something along the way where they said, I could do this better, or we should be doing this differently as an industry. And then they go and they try to figure out that piece. So, and you're one of those people, right? You were a leasing agent, you grew up in a real estate environment, so you really understood the space really well. You were feeling the pain points, right? You just didn't hear about them. And I have to call out your reference to the Palm Pilot. Anytime I reference a Palm Pilot, people instantly know how old I am, right? Yeah. Because, to today's younger generations, they never even heard of a Palm Pilot. This is a primitive device to them.
Yeah, definitely ages me, at least. Do you like country music?
Yeah.
So there's a Brad Paisley song, I think it's called Welcome to the Future. And he says in the song, wherever we were going, now we're here. And so that he talks about video games and having a video game like at the arcade versus on your phone. But I think about that in real estate now. It's like with prop tech, so many things, real estate has always been behind the times. And now it's getting more familiar and things are speeding up with AI and everything else. And so now we're here.
Now we're here. And we really are. I mean, it is an industry that does adopt technology a little bit slower than others. I think there's many reasons for that, but there is a big demand, I would say, not only from the renter, but also from our staff, right? The people that are actively doing the work, they are questioning all the time, why can I order an Uber on my phone, but I can't process a lease on my phone, right? It doesn't make any sense.
Yep, exactly. They're demanding that type of technology, while at the same time, we're very focused on keeping that human element, in that process, because real estate is a very personal, very human to human type industry.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, when you talk about housing, what's more personal than the place that you live, right? That is a very personal thing. So when we talk about things being personal, I think about relationships and how relationships exist and how they work. And we are in a very relationship-driven industry. But that's not always the case when it comes to how we engage maybe with a supplier in the space and with software in the space. So, working and building out Intellirent as a company, when you look at Intellirent and the screening industry as a whole, how should that relationship exist between a property management company and a screening provider. Where's kind of the back and forth exists?
Sure. Yeah. We built Intellirent initially to serve our property management company. So my history in real estate is on the investment side of real estate, so the brick and mortar side of things within property management, and then also with technology now. With the property management aspect, we wanted to create efficiencies within our organization at the time. So when it was originally built, it was a very raw version of Intellirent, just being able to kind of pull certain data points for application screening. And then we saw that, hey, we could actually probably market this and offer it to the broader market, while at the same time, it's very, very important for us to maintain. Most real estate companies, property management companies, think that their process is unique to them, and they develop that process over time. It's very important that they maintain that process. So we're there to enhance that process, not to replace it. Even with AI and all the things that are coming about, it's very important for us to fit into that process, which we do, and create efficiencies, but also give them the most amount of data possible, and then they make those decisions, those screening decisions. So we're not an algorithm that scores, an applicant. We're purely compiling all the information, presenting it to the person responsible for making that decision, and creating efficiencies within their organization so that they could move faster, but in a very educated way. And then also with property management, the margins are pretty thin. And so taking some of those personnel resources and redeploying them to other parts of their business.
No, that's great. And there's so many pieces of what you just said that I can resonate with here at our company. So for anyone listening, this podcast is brought to you by Rent Manager, which is property management software. But we're owned by a company called LCS. That's Rent Manager is the product. And you just spoke about how you really built Intellirent, the screening service for your own company, your own property management company, because you knew what you wanted to do. We're very much the same way. We spoke about that before hitting record, that a lot of things that we build, we use ourselves. And I think that gives you a really unique view into the user's experience, because it has to work for you. And if it works for you, there's a good chance it works for other people. So how long did you operate this product, this system, before taking it to the market and saying, hey, maybe other people could benefit from this as well?
Yeah, it was at least 3 or 4 years. Yeah, and you're exactly right. There's things that come out to market that are really interesting, cool ideas that just from real estate experience, we know are never going to have traction, right? But that's important to do, because then other things move along with them, right? And so with Intellirent, majority of it was, kind of beta tested within our ecosystem, and then we offered it to kind of some, friends and connections within the community, and now it's, across the country. But we really take a lot of feedback from our users and look at the recurring things or the things that they're asking for, and test them out internally, think about them from a real estate experience. Will this have traction, or is it just like a bell and whistle on the platform? And really think creatively, but also intelligently about what will have a use out in the market, rather than just having a bunch of different features that nobody's ever going to use.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And you mentioned AI earlier, and we always have to talk about AI. That's really the buzzword right now. But as we think about AI, I think the question always is this really a practical need solution in our industry? You're absolutely right. A lot of times we hear about this, like, this really sounds interesting. This sounds compelling. But will the operators need and use this in a way that impacts actually how they run their business? And having ran a business, you can spot those right away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And some of it is being used as guinea pigs, right? Meaning, hey, let's, not us, but companies send it out there, not just in real estate, but to other things, and say, let's see if this has any traction, and people are going to use it, and then they either enhance it or kill it. AI is extremely important in real estate as well, but there's that human element that's kind of the core of all the interactions with real estate. And so, AI is a buzzword. Obviously, it's here to stay. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of momentum going forward. We were utilizing some AI sources prior to it being a buzzword. I'm sure Rent Manager was as well, like with tenancy verifications and other things. but we're extremely focused on, yes, utilizing the technology that's at our disposal, but also maintaining that human aspect of the process.
Yeah, and I hear many others saying that in the industry as well, that they are very excited for AI, but any place where their team is interacting with the resident, they really want a human involved there.
And they want it to be controlled, right? Meaning, again, you brought it up. Somebody is selecting their home, whether it's like a short-term thing, near-term, or long-term. It's a very, very personal decision. And it's great that AI can facilitate parts of that, but it's very important that it's used in a controlled basis.
And so while we're talking about AI, and again, we love talking about AI, where do you see AI fitting in specifically to the screening industry? And I mean, obviously, it's a little touchy to talk about that, but a lot of people are a little concerned about it because there's a lot of regulation in screening. If you compare it to maybe the maintenance side of the industry, there's not a whole lot of regulation there, so AI can kind of do a lot of things there. But with screening, there's a lot of controls that need to be in place. Do you think a lot of screening companies are going to use AI in the short term, or is that an area where we're going to try to keep our hands off for a little while until regulators really understand how AI can be used?
Yeah, I think that a lot of companies are going to, because I think, unfortunately, putting a label of AI on a product, there's a lot of attention placed on that. And so in some form, it's purely used as a marketing type tool. I'll just say it, we are not a fan of scoring models at all. We have always stayed away from those. Where I do think it fits in nicely is to create efficiencies within gathering data, right? So if it's a tenancy verification, using AI agents to reach out and gather that information, and therefore the calls could be recorded. People know that it's an AI agent, and receiving that information, capturing obviously credit information, employment information, all that kind of thing, and streamlining workflows. I think where it fits in nicely with real estate is the workflow aspect of it. I think where our position is where it doesn't fit in is like on a scoring model or decision-making type scenarios.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of going back to what we were talking about, that relationship between the property management company and a screening company, what you're saying is we provide the data, they make the decision. We don't need a scoring model. That really is the leasing agent or whoever's doing that on that end. That really is their responsibility to make that decision, that housing decision, because it is such an important decision.
Yeah, and again, putting my landlord hat on, if I have a leasing agent showing the unit, I want them to make that decision or to convey that information to me, right? Again, the information is there, and so probably scoring models can be developed that are that perform well. But if I have somebody, a human, that's handling that process, I want them to handle that process.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And as I think about technology, there are so many more options out there. The industry keeps growing. It's really an exciting time, prop tech, all of these things that are happening. Screening isn't new, right? Screening's been around for a long time, and there's providers out there that have been around for a long time. So I think we're living in a world where we have a lot of new options, call them cutting edge or, maybe more tech advanced. Then we have some providers in the screening world that have been around for a long time that have kind of that experience and that deep-rooted industry knowledge. Where do you see the value sitting between those two? Is it more important to look at somebody that has that deep-rooted experience, or maybe a screening provider that's a little more cutting edge and moving a little bit faster as far as technology is concerned?
Yeah, I think it's both, right? I think if I was selecting a screening provider, I would want to know that they have experience in the industry. It's not just some tech venture that's being put out there, because obviously we're in a very large market, right? And so I want to know that they have experience, that their team has experience, that they have that knowledge behind them, where they're not just throwing out features just to see what sticks out there. Sorry. And then I would want to know that company does have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, right? There are great tools that are coming out in a controlled way, meaning that they've been tested, that the market is accepting them. And so I would want to know that company is staying ahead of those features. but they have that experience to know, hey, this is just a bell and whistle. This is actually something that's useful to our client base.
Yeah, that balance, I'd imagine, is very tricky for a lot of companies out there, whether you're a screening company or not, regardless of the service that you're providing, is how do you kind of strike that balance between that experience and cutting edge, not being so cutting edge that maybe you're taking risks that you shouldn't take.
But again, if you know, right? And you could miss on some of the things, but if it's being used as a marketing tool just to attract clients or attract users, that's a different thing than serving the community, in that it's, we're adding this feature because it's going to enhance what you're doing, versus we're adding this feature because we want to, get higher placement on Google or whatever.
Yeah. Well, again, going back to kind of the AI buzzword, adding a feature simply because you want to be able to put AI on all of your marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So where does Intellirent sit between the cutting edge and the experience side? Since you said kind of doing both, where do you think Intellirent sits in that?
I think we're heavy on experience. Certainly with the experience that I have in real estate, also our team's experience specifically in real estate, but also in technology. And then my favorite meetings or discussions we have are about creative ideas that we're testing, kind of in our own ecosystem of real estate, right? We have the ability to go to kind of user groups within our network to say, is this something that you would even use? And real estate people are pretty blunt when it comes to that. They're like, nope, or wow, that's interesting. And that would actually help with scheduling, or that would help with communication, or that would help with, speeding up the tenancy screening process.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I do love that since you are in real estate, you can test things out, and where you're taking the risk, you're verifying things, working with your network before you roll it out in your actual product and have your customers be the guinea pigs for it. I think that's really smart. Obviously probably builds a lot of confidence with the people that are using your software. So I think that's really good. And talking about the people that are using your software, and I'd love to know your perspective on the screening world and how it views the customer experience. So, and when I say customer experience, I'm thinking property managers, right? The leasing agents. How does your team approach support, right? There's always, everyone always needs support. Talked about the human element. In this world where we're using technology, we're using AI bots for things. Sometimes support isn't the top priority for tech companies. Where do you sit?
Support is actually, I'm smiling because it's one of my, if not my favorite conversations that we have within Intellirent. I don't think it's a priority. It's the most important priority with a company, with a tech offering, especially in the age of AI, right? Because there's so much technology at our disposal that you lose that human-to-human interaction, which is something that certainly our industry craves for, right? Real estate people by nature are networkers, and they're wanting to serve their community. And so our support team is hyper focused on, the way we look at it is when somebody submits a support ticket, the stress goes up, right? That person, whether they're feeling it or knowing it, they're certainly feeling it, but whether it's front of mind, they have stress. And so when we receive that ticket, it's incumbent on our team to obviously research it, look at it, and respond, to get back to them. Because majority of our clients, meaning the real estate professionals, are commission paid, right? Or they rely on the rentals to serve the revenue in their company. And so if that support ticket is not responded to in a timely fashion, that's money out of their pocket. And also our community, meaning our clients, are typically, self-run businesses, small businesses maybe. And so if they're not getting that revenue stream coming in, then maybe they're missing payroll, or at the very least, it's just completely frustrating to them. And so we're maniacal about this, where our team is all over support. And I think it's a cultural thing, right? Meaning culture informs behaviors, behaviors dictate outcome, right? And so our team knows that support is the top priority with our clients. And on the applicant side too, right? I mean, they're searching for a home, right? And so the idea of Intellirent originally was, put the data entry into the applicant's hands. They're the ones that are wanting the space. They might be up at 12 o'clock at night filling out the form to submit versus, somebody taking a phone call and writing it down on a paper application and then faxing it to the credit bureau or whatever. And so, again, if an applicant submits a support ticket, that's stress. And we want to reduce that stress. We want to get back to them. We want to move their application along to get in the hands of the person that's going to make that decision.
Yeah, we agree. At our company, product support, customer support is very, very important. And like you said, in the age of technology where things are moving very, very fast, sometimes the assumption is as soon as you have that ticket that you need help with, when you have an issue, that is where things are going to slow down or possibly even stop, right? That's almost the expectation because they're like, well, if it's not working, it's going to take 3 to 5 business days to get an answer on this. And we don't think that's acceptable. We don't think most people find that acceptable. But when you think about technology, that's typically the experience that most people have had is this long delay. It's one of the reasons we answer live phone calls, right? We want people to know it. No, we heard you. We want to help you. We want to have this resolved quickly.
And let me just say one thing about that is that a lot of technology companies rely on partners that are providing technology, right? And so Intellirent is one of those where if the holdup for us is one of those partners, Rent Manager, by example, that's why we love you guys. One of the reasons. We could easily, blame them and say, hey, we're just waiting on this person or on this company, right? That's not acceptable at Intellirent. There's no blaming, there's no complaining, there's no getting defensive, right? And so my mom used to tell us kids, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so we're all over our partners too, right? It's like, hey, if they're not responding, reach out again, get a response because this person's waiting for it on the other end of the line, right? And so we have a really great system of partnerships where they respond very quickly. Whereas with other companies, not just real estate related, you submit a support ticket to any technology company, usually it's a black hole, which is unfortunate. Where's my package? Where's my food? Where's my Uber, whatever. And so I think that it's extremely important that customers are looked at not only with clients, but with partners, with vendors that serve us that all across the board.
Yeah, I love that you hold your staff, your employees, your team just as accountable as the companies that you partner with. And I think that really is important. It is setting that standard, like you talked about culture, kind of setting the expectation that we believe this is important and we're going to hold these people to this high standard because somebody's housing is on the line here, right? Somebody's business is on the line. Like you mentioned, I think, it's so easy as a technology company to distance yourself from the ultimate end user, which is the renter, right? The person that's living in that home. We can't do that, right? Yeah. There's a real human on the other end.
And it's also frustrating. Empathy is very, very important, but it's like typically you get a response that says, I understand, what you're saying. Great. What are you going to do about it, right? And at Intellirent, like effort is just table stakes, meaning you're coming to work, you're going to work hard, right? There's no real training on effort. We hire for that. The teachings that go on are about what I just said, like reaching out to partners, getting back to the clients or the customers, coming up with creative ideas that are going to be tested behind the scenes before we send those out to our clients. Because I think that's also holding our values true, where it's like, we're not going to treat you like guinea pigs. We're going to try this out. It works within a real estate context, and then you go ahead and use it within the Intellirent platform.
Yeah, no, that's all great to hear. And again, you mentioned even outside of real estate, not even specific to real estate. I'd actually say probably customer support is probably a little bit better inside real estate than it is in other, because I think it is such a relationship-driven environment industry that we are really all holding each other accountable, that we're going to take care of each other, where if Netflix goes down, I don't think there's a person you can talk to about that.
100%. And it is driven is the key word. It's driven by that end user, right? They're not just going to sit idly by and say, well, forget it. I'm not going to rent this apartment. They have clients, right, that are asking them what's going on with this vacancy, and the applicant saying what's going on with my application. And then the technology cannot be that hold up in the process.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about this idea of taking in ideas, implementing them within your real estate ecosystem, right? Not the actual customers of your product, testing them out and then releasing them, which I think is really, really interesting. Most people don't have that advantage, right? Most people are going to work with maybe a subset of customers or something like that to test things out, or maybe not test at all. And they just kind of roll things out once their internal team has figured things out, which makes me wonder a little bit of how you view the feedback loop of future enhancements. We've talked about technology moving quickly and AI and all these things. So how do you view that? Like, what does that look like to give feedback to your team, and how long does it take to process it? All of those things.
We love it. We want it. And when we talk about user tickets and support, obviously things should be perfect. They're not going to be, right? I mean, it's just, and so as those tickets come in, we love, categorizing them, looking at recurring tickets, looking at recurring type of, suggestions on what Intellirent should be doing. We probably are a little bit slower to release feature enhancements or new features because we are testing those out and making sure that the things that we think are important are useful, right, and not confusing to the broader market. But when support tickets come in and they're categorized, we're all over those to look at ones that'll have traction within the market.
Yeah, we believe the same thing. And it's very interesting when you're able to look at the data. And it sounds like you have a really good system for doing that. You talked about categorizing things and looking at what are kind of the hot button issues and what people are asking for. How do you balance out feedback from customers versus feedback just from the industry in general? What I mean by that is obviously people aren't calling you saying, hey, why don't you do this if they're not customers, right? That doesn't make any sense. But if you go to trade shows, different conferences, or watch podcasts like this or read articles, you're hearing about different trends in the industry. How do you balance those? How do you view maybe customer feedback versus industry insights and feedback?
I wouldn't hold just our industry to the feedback equation. It's a broader thing, right? I mean, we can go to conferences for other types of offerings and say, hey, that would be really interesting in real estate, right? And so I think our broader team has the ability to come to the table and say, this is an interesting thing that I'm hearing about in the market. We do hold client or customer feedback at a higher score than just kind of industry feedback or industry feature sets, because we have our ear to the ground listening to them, right? And so we use certain technology to track, obviously their user tickets, but and to compile all that feedback and then to obviously put it into our roadmap. But it's not just inputs from real estate. It could be from, what's Instacart doing these days, or what's a different industry doing these days. We're kind of knowledge rats, I guess you could say. We're just always wanting inputs for that kind of thing. But obviously, concentration and focus is extremely important. You can't do everything, right? And even our market doesn't want everything. They want that feature set to fit into their process, which is going to enhance their business so that they could get to that end goal quicker and with a higher level of intelligence with it.
Yeah, I would agree completely. And we've talked a little bit about this idea of new solutions, maybe trying new things out, testing the market, seeing what they will accept and what they're actually looking for versus listening to the customer and just implementing what they want. And I think there's a little bit of a challenge there because you want to stay ahead, right? But really the customer is the one that's going to drive most decisions because they can tell you what they want. And ironically, what a lot of people actually want is more simplicity, right? Yes. Like you mentioned workflows and things like that. They actually want simplicity. Yes, you could do 1,000 things, but what they really want is, can you do one thing really well?
Yep. Yeah. It's back in the day, the single button on the iPhone. I'm dating myself again. But yeah, I mean, simplicity is key in stripping out what doesn't serve the end user. Right? Because again, we could just throw a bunch of stuff at our users and they can say, wow, we get all these features for, one low cost or whatever. But then it just becomes confusing, which also creates stress, which slows things down, which is not an effective way to run a business.
So with screening, let's say that's the sole focus, that's the one thing you're really driving towards, screening isn't what screening used to be. There's different elements to it. We could talk about regulation and how different areas of the country based on state or zip code or county have different rules that you have to follow. It can be very, very complex. So how do you take something that is complex and simplify it in a way that allows these operators to focus on what they do best, counting on you to do what you do best?
Sure. So everything flows through a regulatory matrix, and then it flows down to the end user, which in this case would be the real estate professional. But it's compiled into what we call a renter resume. And again, it's all the information that the applicant is sending over to Intellirent. But it's just in a readable format, compiled in an organized format. And so they could be out in the field, or they could be, at the office, they could be on vacation, back to my Palm Pilot days. I mean, you're pretty much tied to the paper application in your desk. And now with technology obviously advancing, everything could be compiled into a single file. And so our clients love the resume because they get everything in that one document. They could scan through it, or they could share it with whoever is the decision maker, and that person scans through it and makes a decision.
Yeah, I think that really helps me understand the picture a little bit better, because it is complex. There are concerns when it comes to screening, making sure that you're not violating something that would cause a fine or an issue down the road or a lawsuit, right? That's what these property managers expect, right? To be safeguarded from those things by using a trusted provider. And they want to have a lot of trust in what you're providing them, that when they see it, they know that's all the information. They know, they said it ran through what you call like a matrix, make sure that all the regulations are followed. You're not providing, I'm assuming, more data than what's allowed. There's a lot of those pieces there. And it seems like it changes every single day.
It seems that way, but then again, it's also their decision, right? Meaning it's the property management companies, it's the real estate professionals' process, and so we're purely just sending the information to them, and then their leasing team, their company will have their own policies and regulations and everything, but they're obtaining the information and deciding from that standpoint.
Yeah, and again, we get to have the benefit of all of the technology to make that as simple as possible. So excellent. Well, Taylor, we're kind of turning towards the end of the episode here. And as we do that, I want to make sure we talk maybe a little bit more specifically about Intellirent, right? So you've dropped, I would say, little pieces and nuggets along the way, telling us a little bit about it. Tell us more. What is Intellirent's main focus? Obviously screening, but like when you think of Intellirent, what is the focus within the screening world? What are some of the areas that you're focused most on maybe in the future as you kind of look to the next 1 to 3 years, if there's any advancements that you see coming around the corner, or even competitive advantages that you say, hey, Intellirent really shines in these areas and these industries?
Yeah, our core product is the screening. Like I said, we're in all 50 states, credit, criminal, eviction, tenancy, income verifications. One of the things that our clients love is that we handle the tenancy verifications. They can do it on their own, but typically a landlord's losing a tenant, they're not going to be jumping for joy to follow up with the tenancy verification. But our team does that. They compile the information. The agent could do it on their behalf as well, and so that's all compiled into the renter resume. We also do marketing syndication. Our clients don't have to utilize it, but we syndicate to over 80 websites. We're partnered with over 20 apartment associations throughout the country. The product itself is obviously advancing, and we're enhancing the feature set. One thing I didn't touch on is fraud prevention. So when the applicant uploads pay stubs or income verification documents, we scan those documents for fraud or for manipulation, and we highlight that for the agent, and so they could see maybe it wasn't fraud, right? They're just redacting certain information in their bank statement or whatever, but it'll highlight it and say, hey, just take a closer look at this. We scan IDs for fraud, and then we also do international screening. So if typically if somebody doesn't have U.S.-based credit, a landlord might charge a higher security deposit. In this scenario, if it's a country that we pull screening from, they could run their credit just like a U.S.-based credit report. They get that back. The agent can look at that. Aspects that we're looking at in the future, scheduling. I think that's something where AI fits in nicely. We're all too busy these days, but facilitating that, kind of scheduling for the agents and for the applicants. And further enhancing, obviously, our fraud prevention and the things I mentioned. Our competitive advantage or differentiator is the service aspect of it. Obviously, there's a lot of great products out there, products that we admire, that we have similar feature set to. But if a potential client or customer wants a company that is very, very much driven by service, it's us. They're never going to find themselves in a place where we're not responding, where it's a black hole. We all have access, including myself, to Slack and seeing all the support tickets coming through. And so our executive team is hyper aware of, again, that stress level that I mentioned before, and getting back to our clients on a timely basis. Sometimes things take longer, right? Just from a standpoint of, hey, we have to get information. Hey, we're waiting on Joe at Rent Manager. Blame you in that circumstance. But we communicate that, right? There's a difference between taking time to be careful versus being non-responsive, right? And so there's never, ever an acceptable time to be non-responsive. And so there's just that kind of steady stream of communication, and so that the real estate professional, the agent, knows what's going on, the applicant knows what's going on, kind of connecting those dots and moving people through the process.
Yeah, so many great points there. And absolutely, I would say when it comes to that support side, people just want to know they're being taken care of and that there's that back and forth communication. They know where you're at in the process. People get upset when they're ghosted, right? Yeah. When they don't know what's going on. So that's, I think, really important. On the fraud side, I hear that constantly. Operators are looking for solutions around fraud, and whether that's the income verification piece, what's the application itself, whether it's fake identification or stolen identification, all of those things are huge for operators trying to make sure the right person gets in the right unit. That's really important to them. So I think all those are great. And I loved how you shared more about some of your offerings there. So syndication, right? Mm-hmm. People are looking for solutions around that. Yes, there's lots of solutions out there, but you're looking at that, the leasing process a little more broad. Yes. As far as your product offering. Can we help you find the person looking for a home, the prospect? Can we get them through the application process? Can we screen them? All of those things. Worry about the fraud piece. And then it sounds like maybe some scheduling down there. Because when you said scheduling, you meant for the showings and things like that, correct. I'm assuming. Yeah, which, like you said, technology can do wonders in that space. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And a lot of our client base is, certainly we have larger property management companies or leasing agencies, but especially through the associations, a lot of them are independent real estate owners, right? So smaller mom and pops that don't have access to a property management software. And so therefore they typically don't have access to the syndication piece or to tools like this. And so they come through Intellirent and they could, use our system and get that kind of powerful syndication piece, whereas otherwise they wouldn't be offered that.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And you had mentioned that many times, and this idea of like what the market really, really looks like. Yeah, those independent rental owners, that's a bulk of the industry. I mean, that's a massive part of it. If you think every property management company has thousands of units that they're renting, that's just not the case. That's not how our industry works. So having solutions that really scale between that IRO, that independent rental owner, all the way up to that enterprise level property management company really is impactful and powerful. Yeah.
And again, back to the support service piece, right? Not that property management companies don't reach out for support, and not that they don't want, timely response, but independent rental owners, they might have one property with 3 units and one's vacant. That's their livelihood there, right? And so they're like, I want to get this unit filled. I want the best possible applicant. They reach out to our support team. We take them through it. Maybe they're a little fearful of technology, right? It's just not in their nature to use technology. We help them through that. They get comfortable. They love Intellirent,
That's great that you can help that wide spectrum of folks out there. So before we sign off, people want to learn more about you and Intellirent, the things that you're up to, how you're building your business, both on the real estate side as well as on the screening side, what's a good way for them to reach out and connect?
Sure. My email is tlembi@miintellirent.com. Website is miintellirent.com. And they could go to the website and learn more and submit a support ticket, and we'll respond right away.
That's right. Love that. Put it to practice, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Test out the system.
Try us out.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to drop links in the show notes as well, so you have all of those important pieces that'll be listed there. Well, Taylor, this is great. I always learn so much on these podcasts, but you definitely have provided a lot of insight into really what you're doing and how you're building this business and how you've leveraged your real estate ecosystem, your real estate business to provide this great service to our community and to our industry and keep helping more and more people. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Joe. The podcast is great. And I love the educational aspect of it. It's unique to especially our industry for podcasts. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again for joining us, Taylor. And thanks to our audience for listening in to another great episode. And until next time, keep going beyond rent.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Beyond Rent. If you enjoyed this podcast, spread the word on social media and with your peers in the industry. To be notified when more episodes are released, subscribe using your favorite podcast player. Beyond Rent is brought to you by Rent Manager Property Management Software. Learn more about Rent Manager's industry-leading software solutions at rentmanager.com. Until next time, keep going beyond rent.